And you have people over here, and it's like, thank you for moving in the center. That way we can stare right at each other. Hi, I'm Tim Macy. I'm one of the overseers here at the Well. Thank you for joining us for our special church meeting. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Hopefully we won't be too long, but at the same time, we feel like this is pretty important. So thanks again for hanging around. Hey, I wanted to start with Psalm 133. Kind of in keeping, I chose this psalm actually way before Jeff's message, so it always is funny how the Lord ties a lot of this in. Psalm 133 says this, "Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters dwell in unity. It's like precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron." He doesn't have a beard, but we'll maybe try to coax him into growing a beard here. No? No beard for Aaron, okay. "Running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes." Well, he didn't wear robes, but he wore a sweatshirt today. So, "It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord has commanded his blessing, life forevermore." So let's open with a word of prayer. Father, we just thank you. We thank you for this place in your kingdom called the Well. We thank you that we are able to gather here in your mighty and holy name. And we thank you for our time and our treasure and our talents that we lay before you. And we thank you for how you use those in so many ways. And we thank you for the life of your Son. And it's in his name that we pray and give you the honor and the glory. Amen. Thank you all again. So today, what we want to talk about is that we want to talk about the past, where the Well has been. We want to talk about the present, where we're at as a body, as a church. And then we want to talk about the possibilities. So to start out with, I'm going to ask Pastor Jeff to come up and talk about the past, only because he's been here. So Jeff, take it away.
Check. There we go. Thanks, Tim. For a minute there, I was trying to figure out if you remembered who I was, or if you're going to hit a curveball, like bring Aaron up, because Aaron's been here the whole time too. So yeah. But again, I share Tim's gratitude that you guys hung out. We're going to try to make this as efficient as possible and bring you up to speed as best that we can. I want to go back to May. Is there any way I can get this? Oh, we can't, can we? Here's some dates. May 21st, 2009, the Well starts as a church plant out of Cornerstone Presbyterian Church. Some of you, I look around, you were here then, and I've seen some of you come throughout the years, but that is when we filed our corporate documents that started the pathway of becoming a particular church. That was in 2009. We started this church to be or to do church a little differently. We were in a pretty traditional setting, and we were becoming keenly aware of what we called the postmodern culture that is rolling in, a culture that is okay with contradiction, a culture that is moving rapidly as post-Christian. One of my favorite theologians, D.A. Carson, said it used to be when he started in academia, you'd ask a kid, or you'd say to a kid, ask him about God, and they would talk about the God of the Bible, the Judeo-Christian God. And nowadays, he said in the 90s, they would ask you, which God are you talking about? That's the culture in which we live. And so we wanted to create a church that pressed into that culture as best that we could. In December, I got to go back. I forgot these aren't builds. They're all just up there. December 23rd, 2014. So we moved out of Cornerstone into a place. We rented a warehouse space about a half a mile from here. If you're familiar where Divine Doors is, that's where we had, there was a tool store in there called Marsh Power Tools. We had like what would be the north third of that building. And what happened is we were paying rent, and the rent started, like most rent does, pretty reasonable. But every year it went up, and every year it went up, and every year it went up. And then pretty soon, by about 2014, we were staring at a pretty significant rent rate of between $7,000 and $8,000 a month. We said, well, I think we could pay a mortgage for $7,000 to $8,000 a month. So we started looking for our next place to land, and a guy by the name of Vasilios Damovalidis, yes, he's Greek, he goes by the name Bill, he owned this building, and he wanted to help us to have a space. And so he was going to finance a project if a project of his came through, and it didn't. But he said, you know what, since we couldn't do that project, I don't know, how many of you remember the 63 acres we were looking at the corner of Heine and Old 23? Some of you remember that, right? We were looking there. He was going to finance for us the purchase of that and the building of a building there. And for numerous reasons, it didn't come through. So he says, Jeff, I can't give you your permanent location, but I can help you get into your temporary location. I have a building right down the street from you that's partially filled, which means you'll get the leases, and the leases will pay for most of the mortgage, and that can be a place where you can get established, build some equity until you're in a position to enter into your permanent location. And that's where this was born. In 2014, we purchased this current property for $1.477 million. That was our mortgage amount, because we put money into, there was nothing in this space. There was no heat, there was nothing. It was scratch. Some of you helped build this space out, and it was quite fun. We built walls, and we tore walls down, and all kinds of fun stuff. So we needed money to do that. That was what 1.477 was. The actual purchase price was $1.1 million, and the building was worth at that time about $2.1 million. So we moved into this space with about $700,000 in equity. And we had 3 tenants that were paying rent on a regular basis that helped or virtually covered our mortgage. We have been in this space ever since. Our temporary space is now approaching 10 years. We moved into this space in 2016, and we had the grand opening on April 24th, 2016. In commercial lending, you refinance your loans approximately every 5 years. Our first refinance took place in 2021. We now owe just a hair over $1 million. It's about $1,070,000 is what we owe on this current building. So we've paid off over $400,000 of it. The building, depending on how you do it, is worth, pushing $3 million, $2.5 to $3 million as it sits, and potentially more. We'll get to that in a minute. We have a refinance coming up a year from now, which then the overseers decided that we should take a look at where we are and what might be coming our way as we look at potentially refinancing this space. In light of, it was temporary, and in light of the hope that someday we will be in a more permanent location. So that's kind of where our past is that has led us to this spot right now. Turning it back over to Tim.
So, where are we presently? Obviously, we're sitting in the sanctuary, and the sanctuary is functional. But we were looking at, presently, there's some growth limitations and some growth opportunities that we have here. One of the areas that we have some growth opportunities is in youth, is in children, adult education. We come in for EDU, for example, and we've been in 4 different spots over the last couple of years, and we always try to find, okay, where's the blower that's not blowing when it's wintertime so that it's not too cold and we can hear each other. And so there's things like that. There's opportunities that we have in and around each of these areas. Sunday morning, we have about a capacity about 170, but one of the core attributes of the well is our reflection time. And so having that ability to move around, that takes space. That doesn't just happen in terms of, when you get bigger at times as well, that chews up more space. When you're meeting, at capacity and you're moving around, that's sometimes delicate and sometimes a little bit infringes upon our ability to do some things with reflection that we enjoy doing. So when we look at it, we could expand, and we'll take a look at one of the possibilities. But as Jeff mentioned, our loan is coming up in January of 2026. So that's coming right around the corner. And really, one of the things that when we look at that is that interest rates have gone up, as everybody knows. You go to refinance a house, you're not going down in interest rates, you're going up in interest rates if you're looking to refinance. If you're going to buy a home, it's a little more expensive than it was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So all these things kind of tie in. The other thing that's happened is that external to us is that Trinity Health, obviously you guys have seen right next door, is expanding. Their facility in Howell, I was just meeting with them a couple weeks ago, and their facility in Howell is actually closing down and moving here. So there's a lot more that's going to be centralized with Trinity Health over here. They've recently bought some property near to us, right behind us actually. And so Trinity Health is expanding in this whole area, but they have some limitations as far as where they can grow and what they're doing. But that's going to bring quite a bit of demand in terms of the ability for medical services, medical offices, so forth, coming into the area. So that's where we're at. We have these limitations for growth. We want to continue growing. We want to continue our growth. So what are the possibilities? So the possibilities really, we had a team, and we had a couple teams actually take a look at this. And as a part of the research that they did, and as a part of the research that we've been doing ongoing, we kind of narrowed this down to 4 areas. The first area is in terms of the possibilities, is that we change the current building configuration. So that, for example, today, as you know, we have the facilities here, and then we go down outside when it's freezing cold out. We drop certain kids off down in the area, and then we come back over here. Well, that's a discontinuation of space. That could be changed. We could actually change that so that it's one contiguous space arrangement. Okay, in order to do that, though, we would have to spend about $2 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, to be able to reconfigure the dentist that's next door, to reconfigure back over here and bring that space back over here, and then reconfigure this space in this area. So it's not cheap to do that. As those of you have ever gone through any kind of renovation at home, it always adds up. So when I say $2 million, it could increase. So that's one option in terms of possibilities. Another one is that we could reduce the amount of tenants. We could say, okay, we've got 3 tenants today. Let's go down to 1 tenant, okay? But that impacts us from an income perspective because each of those 3 tenants we draw income from, and it helps pay for this facility. So that's a great opportunity for us to obviously not have to pay for the facility entirely. But when we reduce the tenants, obviously that reduces the income that comes in that helps pay for this. So then when you do that and we say, okay, we're going to reconfigure that, that's even another $3 million in terms of that as well, possibility. But it's still a possibility. It's still an option. The third one is that we would turn the entire building into rental property, and we would increase our income by having that. But then that would also allow us, or that would force us, let's say, into looking for a new space, okay? Looking for a new space or new property or something along those lines. But that would change the ability. We would have the income because we would turn all of this space into potential medical, resources. Medical services are looking for these types of spaces now, especially with Trinity growing. So that would help us from an income perspective coming in. So that's another possibility, if you will. The fourth one is that we sell this building. We sell the building and we look for a new space, okay? It's kind of the same thing except for instead of holding on to the space and renting it out, we sell the facility. So these are kind of our 4 possibilities that we see. Why do we feel that, why do we feel like now's the time to bring this up? Well, a couple reasons. First of all, we believe that God is calling us to bring life to life in our community. We believe that the well is here for that purpose. We believe that the well's mission, as a part of that mission, that we need to look forward in terms of expansion and to enable that mission and equip that mission to be able to move forward in that, okay? And so that's something that we as overseers are strongly in belief of. The third thing is that we believe the timing is right to consider these options and really put a plan together. And again, part of the reason why we feel that the time is right is that there's a lot of movement, obviously, in this area in terms of what's going on with Trinity Health. And their plan is to open up, I believe, in spring of 2026. So we feel like it's an opportunity for the potential here at this location and at the facility. The fourth one is that we believe it's so important for us to be in prayer for this. And that's why we wanted to include you and wanted to basically disclose these possibilities to you, because we need prayer. We need to be praying together for what is the next step in the journey for the well. So, what's our ask of you? Why are we gathering together? What's the important thing? The important thing here is that the number one thing that we would ask of you is prayer. Is that be in prayer for this. Be in prayer for the team that's trying to look at the possibilities and look at the feasibilities that are capable here in terms of facilities, in terms of the property, in terms of what we should do. These things are very important questions that we labor over. Ask us questions. One of the things that we want you to be able to do is to feel free to ask questions. And we'll actually open it up for questions in just a minute here in this setting, but you may not feel comfortable in asking a question in this setting. That's okay. Come up and ask us questions. Ask the overseers questions, okay? Ask us questions that maybe you've never thought of before, or maybe you have thought of before. And then the third thing is seek the Lord in terms of partnering with us on the next step of the journey, no matter what that is. Ask the Lord, is this something that I want to be a partner with the well on? Is this something that I see myself being a part of this? Instead of being distant, but being a part of this new journey. And that's what we would ask, is that, do you see yourselves as a part of this new journey? And then we ask you to partner with us in that as well. And more to come on that. Sorry about that. Last thing is that we would love to hear what you want to hear from us. So what I mean by that is this. Is that, do you want to hear from us every month? Do you want to hear from us every quarter? Do you want to hear from us never? I mean, it's okay. But I think we just want to know how frequently you want to hear from us, and if you want to hear from us, and what that type of communication should be. Okay, whether it's by email, whether it's by text, whether it's by meetings, whatever it is, we want to open ourselves up to be able to do that for you. So at this time, what I'd like to do is I would like to go back to possibilities. There we go. So again, these are the possibilities. I'd like to open it up for questions. So does anybody have any questions right now that you would like to, there, I see that hand back there. Hold on. We got a mic coming to you. That way everybody can hear.
I didn't need this. I'm just curious in the research when you talk about either renting the space out or going somewhere else. Have you researched sort of the cost involved in either selling and using that money to rebuild or to keep, and the difference there? And then the other question I have is just location and not only just proximity, but obviously there's a lot of, I'm in marketing, so I think a lot of a competition, not that we think churches as competition, but is there some opportunity in maybe finding a place that might be serving more people too if it was in a different place?
Yeah, great questions, thank you. The first question is that, yes, we have looked at, we've actually had a couple teams looking at, what the cost, what kind of, let's say, for example, if we were to sell this building, what kind of revenue we could generate from that. We've also looked at what kind of revenue, what kind of income could we have in terms of renting it out if we reconfigured this space and then renting this space out. We've looked at both of those areas and both of those options, and actually in both possibilities up here. In regards to the location, really what we've tried to do is try to stay in, I'll call it inside the triangle between 96 up to 59, up to, 23 in and around that area, and then all the way back west in terms of like the Howell area, where 96 and 59 meet as well. So we consider that kind of the triangle area that we've been looking at. We've looked at several properties in and around this area. There's a lot going on from that perspective. There's a lot of things going on in Livingston County, as you guys know, from a building perspective. So we've looked at all of that as well, and we've got quite a few options from that perspective. Nice question, thank you.
Wow, this is a lot to take in at one time. One possibility that you didn't put up is status quo. Just stay the way we are. With the limitations, just accept the limitations we have and say that this is how we're going to be and where we're going to be. Along with that, though, comes the increase in the costs. And with the rental income and the contributions from the congregation, is that viable? Is that even something that you can perpetuate? You know, I look at how much everybody contributes every week, you know, and I don't keep the spreadsheet, but I wonder how long that's even viable, just to continue on. Then I've got a whole list of things, and I don't want to bother everybody with them, but this has generated just so much in my head. The possibility, even during the time, say you take 3 and 4 and you do that, there's a time in which there's a transition. Where would you be in the transition? Would you look for another rental property to stay in until such time as you're going to find a place? Would it be possible to partner with another church? Is it possible to go ahead and blend churches? You started at Cornerstone and became this. People from Cornerstone came here. That kind of a thing. My mind is kind of boggled by this. I don't have enough time or words.
So I will try to address what I can address. Bill, thank you for bringing up the possibility that we did leave office to staying here. We just kind of made that as an assumption that's we can stay and do what we're doing, like we're doing it today. There's no doubt about that's necessarily an option, and it's an option that we have talked about quite extensively. In everything that you mentioned, in terms of rental transition, we have basically talked about that, but that would come with any kind of further plans, in terms of if there was, let's say, one of the possibilities that we executed on, that we got further down the line, we would actually put together a plan as a part of that, and communicate that out and actually have your input before we actually solidified any plan moving forward. So anything that's done, we want you to be aware of it. We want to be completely transparent from the standpoint of where is the next step, and whatever that next step is, we want the entire congregation to be aware of what that next step is and be supportive of that, and basically be in unity on that as well. So all those options, everything you mentioned, we've talked about, and sometimes we've talked about them more than what we wanted to talk about them, but they're all there. So Bill, feel free to, if you have a lot more questions, feel free to you can email me or you can email any one of us, or if you want to get together, we can get together and go through that as well. We're available any kind of medium at all.
I'm sorry, one quick add-on. You mentioned that next year, in January, that's a pivotal point in terms of rates going up. So what's the timeline for a decision? When are you looking to make some kind of decision?
Yeah, that's a good question. That kind of narrows down, okay, what we probably want to, I would say during the summer, we're looking to start at least presenting to you what the plan, what kind of plan or what a plan might look like. But we need to make some decisions before that. Now, we don't have to. We can roll over, but we know that the mortgage rate will increase from that perspective, okay? Because the interest rates have gone up. So just if we do nothing, the interest rates go up, our payment goes up to the bank. So That's just a fact of life. So we would like to make decisions before then, though, definitely before then.
So in light of transparency, you have costs there for number 2, but 3 and 4, what are your proposed costs for building? And have you signed any type of agreements with anything at this point?
Yeah, so good question. From a standpoint of cost, the reason why we didn't have anything on 3 and 4 is that right now we don't have any firm numbers. We have some estimates. We have some, I'll call them ballparks at this point, swag numbers. And so in order to get to any kind of estimates for number 3, rental income, you have to know exactly who's moving in. You have to know when they're moving in. You have to get kind of things like letters of intent that say, hey, we're going to pay this amount. We haven't reached that point yet. We're able to identify that. We've got some estimates, but that's only because we've talked to some realtors and we've identified some of the costs that some of the income that we could get in on 3. In regards to building or looking at new buildings or looking at renovating a building or a rental facility for a transition, all of those we have estimates at this point in time, but we don't have anything firm, so we do not want to communicate anything yet from a firm perspective. The question on the contract, have we signed any contracts? No, we have not signed any contracts as of yet for anything.
Excuse me. Has leadership talked about and realized the effect of the potential loss of some of the congregation?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we have talked about is if we move, let's say we move to the furthest depths of Livingston County, which is not where we want to go, but we move to some location in Livingston County, which is just not a great location, but we got a great deal. You know, that always can kind of play into there. We have talked about
Yeah, we're
that.
not
We
even
have
close
talked,
to
that's
there
why
yet,
we were
though.
focusing in and around the ability to stay
200
within the
bucks.
triangle area, because we are looking to stay, relatively speaking, in the same amount of distance. So as a part of what we did from a study perspective is that we took a look at where everyone lives, and then we broke down who lives in what communities and what percentage of the congregation lives in Howell, what percentage lives in Brighton, and so forth. And so that is a factor in all of the preliminary feasibility work that we've done, and just to look at, okay, what's the best location? And that plays into the best location as well. Does that answer the question? So yes.
So I just wanted to, I'm Josh Gerke, by the way, for all those that don't know, guy with the mohawk. The one question I have is, when we look at all of this, do we have a thought out or strategic roadmap for what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're going to get there? Meaning that if we strategize on what our budgets are, what we're looking at, what our projections of, like what Bill's asking, all of those things, surveying our congregation, have we outlined all of this into a roadmap so we could see it? And then if we were to pursue it, could we then see that on a quarterly aspect? Because I think when looking at it as a business, and we have to treat this like a business decision, right? Because it is. When we're looking at all of it, our options should be all out there and written out like this. This is amazing, I appreciate it. We should write out all of our options are. What were those foils secondary to those options? Then when we roadmap this out, we can then know what is the updates when we move forward, because I think that would be ideal for all of us. And then when questions come in, now we have an ability when we come in on a quarterly basis, we have the questions that are getting asked, we can then see the answers to that as a congregation. And then we also know where we're going and what those timelines are. What is for case in point, when Bill asked the questions like when we have to make a decision or when are we looking to make the decision, all of that is outlined saying our goal is by, hypothetically, July of this year, we'd like to have decisions made and move forward. And this is our asks that we need from the congregation. In order to get there, we would propose on these dates. We've already done our estimates. We've already looked at our ROI, our return on our investments. Here's our budget outlines. Here's our project outline. Everything is outlined in there so that we could see it, because for me, this looks like we're somewhat throwing darts at a dartboard right now. And I'm just this is my outsider's perspective, and I'd like it to be a little bit more fine-tuned when we look at going, okay, when we're looking at all this, we're gonna have a lot of questions. We can't answer all the questions, I get that. However, it would help so that we could see what is the roadmap, what is the train of thought and the timelines and our projections and when the decisions need to be made, so that we could figure this out as a congregation on where is it we should go.
Yeah, Josh, great question. And we have actually talked about, and we, as a part of our process, is that we want to put together basically a project plan. And as a part of that project plan, you would see the milestones, what you mentioned basically from a project plan perspective, from a project manager perspective, and you project managers, milestones. Milestones are really important, especially for any group, so that they can agree to the milestones, either moving ahead or stopping or slowing down or something along those lines. Absolutely. So we would welcome you to our team from the standpoint of being able to put together a plan like that and be able to communicate that out. So thank you for that suggestion. Come on board. Come on aboard.
Hey, Tim? Also, I just wanted to back up that and go back to why we're here. You're not going to be asked for a decision today. You're absolutely right. The problem is there's a lot of variables in exactly what you're going to do. What we're informing you is that there's a thought process that is beginning, and we're bringing you in on the very, very, as early as we can. We've done a lot of legwork to try to see what possibilities there are, and the leadership has felt that it was, before we make any concrete stuff or ask you to even make a decision about which way to go, to let you know we're thinking this way, and to begin the prayer movement here, so that first and foremost, before any strategy, before any plans, before any concrete dates, before any contracts are signed, we start saying we as a body are going to pray. And we're going to do that at the end, but you're absolutely right, but we're a step earlier than that right now. We're simply saying, here's the thought process. We have a lot of options, which means we're going to be coming to you with a lot of questions and a lot of decisions to be made. I hope you're praying between now and then and you're not waiting to there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just look at a consolidated timeline.
Yep.
This is a consolidated timeline.
God's time.
Yeah. So, well, I'm just looking at it from my distance, right?
Yep.
This is a consolidated timeline. 15 or 15 is our. I'll pray.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I might have missed the answer to this already, but why, what's the reasoning of moving? Are we too small, or?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about just a little bit earlier was in the present, we've got some challenges in and around. For example, the nursery area, the little kids area, that's a small area. If we wanted to grow, we really have the limitations in that space. And beyond that space is the dentist office. So we can't just knock the dentist office out, but then we have other space in terms of offices and the youth area and some of the little kids area. But again, it's not contiguous. So in a world today of security-minded parents, which I am a security specialist and for many years, I can tell you that I wouldn't like dropping my kids off and not necessarily having that space in between. I would like to know I can go reach my kids right away if I need to get to my kids. So not having that contiguous space is a challenge. Having limited space, meaning it's just small, is going to limit your growth, honestly. There's other ways around that, absolutely, but it limits our growth. From an adult education perspective, coming from EDU, I can tell you, again, we have no space. We meet in the sanctuary for EDU. We have no whiteboards. We have nothing to be able to, no classroom. We have no ability to meet except for what we've set up and we tear down every week, from an EDU perspective. So it would be nice to have that space. Do we have to have it? Not necessarily, but it would be nice because we'd like to grow what we're doing with our equipping ministries as well. And to be able to do that, it takes some classroom space, and that would be helpful as well. Does that help?
Well, in one sense, I'm very relieved, because what happens is when we talked about the possibilities for the future, one of them was that we're no longer viable and we'd have to close. So that's off the table. We are viable, we can continue. Whew. Okay, that's a big one, because that's not up there either, that we can't sustain ourselves as we go on. And there are churches that have failed. So we're looking to the future, which is good. The second thing is that I want to thank all the people who participated in these assessments. They're not easy. You've got a couple more options to put up there yet. But you already touched on the fact that you need help to do this. So the question I would have is, what help do you need in terms of skills or talents or just people, you know, to go ahead and do this? Because you started some very good work and it needs to be completed. My daughter, who's unfortunately living in Grand Rapids, is a project manager for Pfizer. And one of the things they do is they fast track projects. And because of your timeline, you need to do some fast tracking. One of the techniques they use is, what's it take to kill a project? So rather than looking at how do we make this happen, what does it do, what has to happen for it to die or kill? And that's how they eliminate some of the options. So I guess I'm volunteering.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that volunteerism. Anybody else want to volunteer besides Bill and Josh?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I'm just curious, I was fortunate enough to come to the well the very first service that they had. Our church we were previously going to closed. And so it's been a joy to see the changes that have taken place. And Jeff, anybody that's been around him, he's a wonderful visionary, and he usually backs it up by good data. So I'm just looking, not necessarily right now, but maybe in sometime soon, a vision that the overseers have right now, knowing that it may change, but I'm just curious.
Thank you.
For the space, like what would
Yep.
it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's something that we have an intention is a part of that, is really presenting that vision that so that you can see what we're talking about from a just from a next steps perspective, because it's good to have a vision. A people without vision perish. So I've heard that somewhere.
It's not so much a question, it's more like a statement. I, like Danette, was one of the first ones that, when the well said they were going to start the first service, I was there and never looked back. We look at our sanctuary approximately holds 170 individuals, but one of the things we don't know, and I was part of, when I first came on board, I was one that helped set up the church and and stuff like that, is the number of families that come and take a look and then turn around and leave because there's no room for them in here. Now you think, man, what are you talking about? There's empty chairs, but that's not true. When the church gets to be about 2/3 full, that's its filling point. And I also look back, and I don't want to bring this up as bad, but it is something to think about. I and a couple other people in the overseers put this together, or I threw it up to the overseers, and we as a church agreed on it, that Jeff and Kathy, they've been ministering within the well over 15 years, doing two builds in that process, and not have a single break, didn't have a single break. And we said, you know what, they need to go on a sabbatical. And if you look at the giving during the time of the sabbatical, we went down to less than right around $2,000 a week is what we were looking at. And so the question that really comes up, and this is one of the question that we threw forward, is if we don't look to change, we'll die. And Bill mentioned that, and there's been some good churches around this area that they're not around anymore because we got comfortable Because we liked the status quo, and we got comfortable being right where we're at, and we never looked at how can we grow. And the Church of Jesus Christ is not stagnant. There's a spiritual, these are financials that we looked at, the numbers we looked at, and the potential we looked at. But there's also the spiritual side too. If we choose not to grow, then another church is going to come in, or something else is going to come in and take over, because God's Spirit's going to move with those that are looking to grow. That's my point.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. I just want to say thank you, Jeff, and the overseers for bringing this at such an early stage. And I know that 10, 11 months seems like a long time, but when you're asking for the vote to be in the summertime, I really do appreciate you bringing all this information in a timely fashion like that. And then for me personally, to look at the milestones and to get a better comprehensive overlay of the situation, I would vote at least to be updated monthly. I think a third-day period is a good enough time to generate some movement forward and some answers. Because quarterly, when you've got this limited time, wouldn't be sufficient, I don't think. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's good feedback. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike, the dad of Mohawk Man. First, I'd like to say we've been around the well for a while, and then we weren't. COVID and the challenges that we spoke of politically and all of those things. But what I'd like to say, having come back and having been so well received, is those of you that are used to this, I want you to know you have something that's absolutely wonderful. When you've been away from it for a while, it's very easy to come here and see it. So the Spirit of God, in so many ways, is moving in many places, but He is especially moving here, and has blessed my family tremendously. So one of the things there, I think, is what we have to, as others have mentioned, that the numbers are very, very important. And we're not a business, we're a kingdom, but we have to function, we have to do business within the kingdom. And Scripture is very, very clear about that. But I think one thing that I would ask that we not miss, to my brothers and sisters and to my fellow sojourners, is that we don't miss the fact that we're a kingdom. That's what we're doing here. We don't do the well, we do the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And that's something that really keeps us on pins and needles in so many ways, but then also fortifies us against all of those other things. But if you think of where we were, and especially where we were in the last 5 years, and the faithfulness of the leadership, the faithfulness of the people that have continued to come and have battled through so much difficulty, especially the spiritual warfare that has taken place, I would say, people, be of good cheer. That if this is a challenge, let this be a beautiful adventure challenge, not fear. I've just come out of a very, very dark period of fear in my life. And so I would just like to say to you, out of love, don't be afraid. And if you are, then find those people that aren't and unite with them and partner with them and speak to the overseers and encourage them, and then especially in prayer. Seek the Lord's face, turn it all off, and turn Him completely on. Seek the Lord's face in this, and be a part of that faith over fear, be a part of that adventure, because I think exactly what Gary said is we are given a particular time now that is very unique in the stage of the world, and we are to go and break down the gates of hell. And that's not an exaggeration. That's really what we're doing. And so I'd like to thank those that have participated in that in my life and broke down the gates of hell in my life with your faithfulness. But we really are on a mission, and that mission is to usher in the kingdom of Christ. And so I think as long as we do that, then the truth is we cannot fail. And we have to, again, take care of the business of the kingdom, but do it understanding that we serve a king. And so, and I know you know that. I just wanted to remind us all of the obvious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that word of encouragement. Thank you. Yeah, you're up next week. Mike, you're preaching next week.
Hi, just a quick question. At the beginning, you mentioned that, and I think most of us know that St. Joe's is moving and they're going to eventually be closing the location in Howell. So my question is, how much leverage can you use? I don't know if it sounds like you've been in discussions with St. Joe's about this property, and how badly do they want this property? Because my thought is could you use that as some kind of leverage to have them partner with you in seeking an alternative location? So when you have a property that someone else wants, you can bake in a lot of, hey, before we sell you this, these are some things we would like in return. And again, I don't know how badly St. Joe's may want this property, but have you given any thought to, can you use, because they're a big organization, how much can you use this property as leverage in having them help or partner with the church in the aspect of where you go and where you build and so forth?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. It's absolutely a question out there as far as what kind of partnership that they might be interested in. You know, as of right now, everything is very preliminary. There's been just very, very preliminary and brief reaching back and forth, and kind of just what we're trying to do at this point in time is just even establish communication and relationship. So we're still at the very early stages of anything like that. But I would invite you to come in and negotiate with us if we get to that point. Need a lawyer? Did you say we need a lawyer? Oh, okay. Oh, I was hoping you were a lawyer that we could get for free. Anybody know a lawyer for free, by the way? Is that an oxymoron? A veterinarian? Well, he's already on board, I know that. Any other questions?
One last question. As we had the options that you had up there, one is, you know, obviously expanding on its place here. The other one is, you know, flipping this into a total rental, and the other one is looking into selling this and getting to a new location. Because those three are up there, and all of them are cost and figures of $2 to $3 million and upwards. Should we now start talking about doing a fundraising campaign drive? Because that's going to need to be done regardless of which choice we make.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from a timing perspective, that gets into our plan. You know, from a planning perspective, when and if something like that arises, we would present that and we would talk about that. And that would be something that would be a part of a plan. So we're just not right now necessarily at that stage because we're at the very beginning, which kind of segues into, I hope is there any other questions? I'm trying to wrap up in terms of time. There is? So if you didn't hear Randy's question, it was do the renters know, do those that are leased. Not from the standpoint of necessarily that we were making any plans, because we have no plans to communicate yet. So, but I'm sure that they're might be aware of some of the possibilities that we might be looking at something like this. And now, you know, that would enter into all of you. We would trust, and we would also ask for your trust in terms of the communication around this, that although there are possibilities, we would ask you to keep that communication, that dialogue down, and focus in around prayer and around seeking the Lord. Because as Bill said, you know, we listed the top 4 possibilities, but you know what? There's probably several more possibilities. And so we would ask you, though, when you're talking about this in your families and when you're talking about this amongst each other, to focus in around, first of all, praying for it and encouraging each other to pray for it and encouraging each other that this is God's kingdom, this is God's church. And so we want to leave a lot of that dialogue to Him, so that we don't enter into speculation, because speculation can really be something that you have to manage quite extensively, especially in any project. So you'd like to keep speculation down to a minimum, and that's what we would ask of you guys as well, that we would keep all of that speculation down to a minimum.
I'll be real fast. So I've been here obviously since the beginning, before the beginning of the well, and it's been an amazing journey. When we made our moves to different places, we kind of had in mind, or we thought God was leading us in one direction, and then He showed us something different. So the cool part, as Tim was just kind of mentioning, it's like, okay, we're going to put these plans together, we're going to pray, and God's going to do what He wants to do. Are we willing to follow? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So So the exciting part is where he's got us going next, but let's not get too hung up on the end result because he may change it. But we just have to be faithful and trust that he is moving and he is leading. I believe this is, for those of you who've been around, this is a kairos moment, okay? This is a fork in the road. We're at a spot where, you know, God's leading, so we need to see what he has to say. So anyway.
Thank you, Aaron. And he needs a beard, by the way.
Okay, this is my last one, I promise.
I hope so.
Bill promises.
I promise. We had the distinct pleasure of going to Sounds of the City over at 242 on Friday. It was a wonderful event. There were about 10 or 12 churches that were represented there, and it was all about singing and worshiping. And it was really great to see how the church communities could come together in a single event just for singing and worshiping. And imagine if they all got together and started planning on a community basis about what is going to happen, who's going to try to do what. And I was absolutely amazed, first of all, at the size of 242. Wow, okay? I was even more amazed to find out they have 7 campuses. And I'm like, what are they doing? What in the world are they doing? How can you sustain 7 campuses? All right? So my thought would be, you know, are we looking to be a 242? Are we looking to be something smaller? Northville? Northridge? What are we looking to be in the future? Because that kind of determines how we grow, where we grow, what we do to grow. Okay? And that's a big question. That's a God question.
Yeah, I would say that Scripture says God causes the growth. And let's let him cause the growth. Anybody else? Thank you for your time. What we're going to do now is that we wanted to take this opportunity and really do something actionable, which is pray. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to lead us through that.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for all that. Thank you for all your questions. And Bill, we don't want to be 242. We don't want to be Northridge. We don't want to be Kensington. We want to be the well. And we want God to speak to us. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do something we did way back at the beginning of the well when we were trying to figure out where we were going to go when we left Cornerstone. We're going to pray, and we're going to have a concert of prayer. So in the back, we have our reflection stations lined up in one big line, and there are cards face down. What I would like you to do right now is to get up and go find a place in front of one card. Ready, set, go. Hopefully there's enough cards for everybody. I think there should be. One person per card. They don't need any pens. Both sides of the table, it's going to be tight. So get comfy with the person beside you. Hopefully everybody took a shower today. One person per card. If we need more cards, there are some over there if we need some more. Let's slide in. Everybody got a card? All right, it's face down because we want it to stay face down for a minute. What we're going to do is there are 6 different topics for prayer. What I'll do, and God said, Jesus tells us to abide in him and we will bear much fruit. Apart from him, we can do nothing. The number 1 abide activity is prayer. Prayer is not about changing God's mind. Prayer is about changing us and changing our mind and our hearts and allowing him to speak. We cry out to him and we tell him what's on our mind. I love when my kids come up and say, Dad, I'm struggling with. Dad, I don't know what to do about. Dad, I'm really tired of this. Dad, I'm really angry about this. And I really love when they come and share that with me. So that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to share with God some of the things that are on our hearts. So what's going to happen is in a minute, I'm going to ask you to take your card in front of you. In a minute, don't do it right now. In a minute, you guys are always trying to jump ahead. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to take your card, and I'm going to give you about a minute to a minute and a half for you just to silently pray that prayer. Prayer over that topic. After about a minute and a half, I'm going to have you then take your card and pass it to the right and receive one coming to you from the left, which will be a different topic. We will do this, you guessed it, 6 times. That means everyone will get to pray for every single deal. All right? This is done because truly, truly, it was getting to the point where we were going to have to start making some decisions. And we said, we can't do that. We need to bring our people in to pray. So that as the decisions come, as they come clearer, as the details come clearer, we are bathing this already in prayer and our minds are being aligned with God. And so that's what we're looking to start here. This is just the starting point to our prayer journey, and we ask that you would journey with us. So, all right, if you would, you can pick up your prayer card. I will lead us in and then give you about a minute to pray that. Dear Heavenly Father, we as the congregation, the family of the well, we come to you, Dad, as brothers and sisters, and we bring these cares and concerns to you in Jesus' name as we continue to pray. You have about a minute and a half. Pass your card to the right. And continue to pray. Pass your card to the right and continue to pray. Pass your card to the right and continue to pray. Pass your card to the right and continue to pray. Last one, to pass your card to the right and finish your prayer. Oh, Father, King of kings, Lord of lords, thank you that we get to call you Dad and that we live in your kingdom, that we are fellow heirs to Christ. And so, Lord, we pray that your kingdom would break into our minds and our hearts, that we would thank you for all of what you've provided for us so far and the direction you will provide. Give us the boldness to press in behind you, realizing that you are calling us on a great journey. As we were reminded that we are called to break down the gates of hell, that even those gates will not prevail against us. So, Lord, may we join you on your mission to bring about the abundant life for those who are lost without hope, without a God to turn to, and without anything to look forward to. Lord, speak to us in the days, weeks, months, years ahead, so that we can hear your voice and follow your lead. Thank you that we get to join you in your mission because of Jesus. And it's in his name that we pray. And all of God's people said, amen. thank you so much for coming. You will be hearing more on this as details come about, and continue to pray. Just to reiterate, if you have questions that you want answered or you want to get involved, see Tim Macy, Aaron Bell, Stuart Bauman, Spencer Smith. One of those guys can absolutely help you, or you can come talk to me and I'll tell you, you can go talk to them. Thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon.